Wonderful. I'm Chris Hudson. I work with AI Minnesota. I am the staff liaison for the Committee on Design, and I have been for several years now. Always get to take part in this open house that we do every year in April. First, we used to do it for the Young Architects Award, and we added the Next Gen Award because it has so many parallels to the Young Architects Award. We combined the two for this open house. I'm joined by a couple of folks who are going to present their winning submissions for these two programs for the last year, and by the co-chairs for the Committee on Design. So welcome all of you for coming. We appreciate your attendance. I think when we get to the Q&A portion of the program, we may be at a number where we can just talk to each other and not use the chat function. So when we get to that point in the program, I'll have you use the raise hand function under reactions on your Zoom interface. But we'll get started here. I want to first introduce Doug Bergert, and then Doug will hand it back to me, and I'll introduce our two presenters today. Doug is one of the two co-chairs of the Committee on Design, along with Rebecca Moko, who's here, and we have a co-chair-elect as well. I don't think Scott's here today. So Doug, I'll hand it to you, and I'll do a share screen of our webpage for Next Gen Award and for the Young Architects Award.
Thanks, Chris. It was, as we were chatting right before we got started at 4 o'clock, I was kind of going over some of the things I wanted to touch on in this introduction, but then you said something about your perception of these award programs and how affirming and gratifying that they are, and that just that actually kind of describes how I feel about these even better than what I originally had scripted for myself, because I've been on some of the juries for the Young Architects Award. And of course, as a member of the Committee on Design for AIA Minnesota, it's always been really great to see these awards that recognize young designers. And one of the things that for me is so exciting is for people, I mean, I'm always struck by the achievements of the folks that win these awards, or even, most of the folks who submit for them. But what's really exciting is to see the level of involvement and the commitment to service. People who are members of the Committee on Design or other AIA Minnesota committees are really doing a great service to the design culture of our state. So for me, that's one of the reasons that I continue to be part of the committee that I'm on, is to be involved in that service and involvement, and to have an opportunity to recognize it. So thanks for coming, everybody. I know you didn't come here to listen to me, so I'll hand it back to Chris.
Thanks, Doug. I just want to make everyone aware that we have these pages on the AI Minnesota website. If you go to the AI Minnesota homepage under Get Involved, you have AI Minnesota Awards, and then you've got these tabs over here with all of our awards, which list all of the eligibility criteria, the selection criteria, submission requirements, and so forth. So, and I am your contact for all of your questions related to this. My email address and my phone number, office phone number, are at the bottom of the page for each of these two award programs. So without further ado, we've asked two folks who won last year. Ellie Ziai from BKV Group won the Next Gen Award in 2023. She's no longer an associate AIA member. She's now licensed and an AIA member. She'll tell you a little bit more about herself when she's up in just a moment. And then next we'll have Laura Eder from ESG Architecture, who won one of the two Young Architect Awards last year, and she'll present her submission from last year. So we thank them both for coming, and I will hand the screen over to Ellie. Ellie, I think you're still on mute.
There we go. It somehow disappears. Do you guys see the AI website, or do you see my PDF?
We see your PDF.
See my PDF. All right, sounds good. I wasn't sure if we were gonna go over some of the requirements, but that's obviously listed on the AI website. So maybe I'll touch on them as I go and review the application that I sent. But happy to answer any questions, and Chris is a resource for all of you. So one of the main criteria was a nomination letter. And so the submission for me starts with that nomination letter. And that was from Tom Fisher for me because I was his student and have worked with him in different capacities. And he has seen me sort of do some of the work that I do in our community. And so that felt appropriate. And then there are some criteria about giving a little bit background on yourself when you are putting these submissions together. So mine starts with a background about myself, my origins, and the education and work experience that I've had, some of the AIA participation and the initiatives that I've taken a part of. Um, and then it goes into some of the work related things that I do. And so I started working when I was an undergraduate and worked between undergrad and grad. So I had to kind of clarify some of those things in the narratives. And then I have been able to work on some things within the firm. And so I was able to explain those, and you'll see some of the project examples and how I broke those off. Of course, every individual's experiences will be different. And this is just explaining my journey. So some of the things that I was doing was facilitating some community projects at the time, and then leadership opportunities and honors. I was taking part in a program that was a national program called Next to Lead, which was for women with diverse backgrounds, and kind of spinning off of that and the capstone project that I did explaining sort of what I was doing with the MAF at the time and the Bigington starting a mentorship program for them. And then there are questions, I believe, on publishings and other things that you've done. And so I wrote a little bit about a few articles that I've helped publish, and then talked about my future goals. And these are some photos of conferences I've attended and groups that I'm a part of. And then with that, I go into exhibits, and there's, restrictions on how many pages, et cetera, which you'll see on the website. The exhibit talks through some of the projects that I've been a part of. This sheet in particular kind of goes through a trajectory from my career from about 10 years ago up to the spring last year, and what I've done. One thing that I did, even though there's 2 recommendation letters, I felt like there was more to the story to be told from other people's perspective. And so I reached out to some of my colleagues and some of my clients, and asked them what their experience has been in working with me. And so that's what you see at the top of the page in the gold color. That is from other people. And so I tried to make that, different, so that they knew that's not something I'm writing, but it's somebody else writing about me and working with me. And so this one starts with my colleague talking about how I have learned from him and how I perform on the projects today. And then this particular page is about some internal BKB efforts that I have done, and it's BKB Workshop is a pro bono entity that we started within BKB Group with my colleagues about 7-8 years ago. And so a lot of my leadership and community projects have been through BKB Workshop. So I felt like it was important to explain what that was, how it was created, and the types of projects and people we have been serving through that. Again, that you see in different colors. This one was from a professor. This one was from a client. And then the next page is regarding a different typology, again, mixed use and multifamily residential projects, which is what I've done a lot through BKB and kind of explaining my role on the projects and the impacts. The next one, I was involved with many mission-driven clients at the time, shelter typology, and so the client wrote a little blurb which I included with the projects and what we have done and what the impact has been. And then there were things that I had done in early parts of my career that weren't fitting necessarily into the other projects that I was showcasing. And there were things that I was doing today. And so I felt like it was important to tell my trajectory of professional work. And so this page kind of goes through that trajectory a little bit and showcases some of that work. And then I believe that there is a need for a declaration of responsibility and making sure that everything that you are saying you have done and your involvement on the projects. And this is by our president, Mike, who also did the recommendation letter for me. So, and then one of the recommendation letters for me is from one of our BKB workshop clients who we worked with for a community project in a pro bono capacity. And as I mentioned, the next one is from the president of our firm who actually wanted to nominate me and who got me started to think about even applying for some sort of award. And so really appreciated his push and encouraging me to apply. He originally wanted to have me apply for the Young Architects Award, but at the time I was not licensed. So I told him I'm not licensed. I can't go for that yet. And when I am licensed, I have 10 years. So it was wonderful to be able to apply for this award. And I really appreciate the AIA being able to create this to recognize people who are, you know, not later in their career, but actually early in their career. With that, I will turn it over.
Thank you, Ellie. I feel the need to say that Ellie has accomplished a lot early in her career, and that is a fairly extraordinary amount of experience to be able to showcase in the Next Gen Award. Not all entries need to demonstrate that level of depth and of experience. Ellie has really knocked everyone out with all that she's accomplished, but we don't expect every Next Gen Award entrant to have that much project experience and industry experience. I will pass it on now to Laura for her winning Young Architect Award entry from last year.
Yeah, as soon as you share screen, your mute button goes very far. All right, can you see my screen? All right. I did my presentation just a little bit differently. I've got some notes on what I did on each page, but then also have just a few of my slides. I think Ellie is well prepared to just go ahead and submit now for the Young Architects Award. That was a great application that you have spent. So the selection criteria for the Young Architects Awards is for you to demonstrate outstanding architecture accomplishments and leadership qualities and significant contributions to the community at large. It focuses on design excellence, practice, education, and service. So my thought to you as you're creating this application is, why are you being nominated? Why are you applying for this? It's a really good time for great reflection on the work that you've done as a licensed architect and a member of AIA. And thinking of the kind of three buckets of design, practice, and community. So how are you, how has your work influenced design excellence? What has your impact been on the profession or the practice of architecture? And then community, how have you given back to the profession and to your community as well? So kind of touching on all those aspects as you go through your application. So similarly, I started with the nomination letter. Your nomination letter, in my opinion, you should help craft this with the person that's nominated you, but it should definitely avoid broad generalizations. You're great, so are we. Everyone's great. So try to be very focused on why you're great. And I think it needs to speak directly to your summary statement. So you have to write a 25 to 35 word summary statement about why you're what impact you've had. And especially when you go to the AIA National with this award, they're very much into your summary statement needs to kind of tie through the whole process. So then also in this nomination letter, highlights of the accomplishments that you've done and then why they feel like you should be a good candidate. I had Mark Swenson, the founder of ESG, nominate me for this award. So that's this letter here. And then secondly, a biography. So I started with a summary statement at the top. So my commitment to environment and the profession is shaping the way urban mixed-use architecture can reduce impacts on climate change by leading initiatives that advance the design process and educate the design community. And so throughout my whole process, talking through environment, community, mixed-use architecture, and how it's reducing impacts on climate change was kind of the thread as I was trying. So sustainability was kind of my main focus. And you'll see that as I kind of go through. I thought the biography felt like a resume page. I didn't go very far back past my education, but I also think that this is a good time to tell a little bit about you and the work that you've been doing. So this was kind of my, we'll call it resume page. I also added a little bit of notes. Apparently Ellie and I were on the same page on notes with the color scheme we were using. That kind of how I focus on sustainable design, because this was kind of a less personable page in my opinion. Also, this is a great picture of me that my marketing team at work thinks is the best picture. This is my personality, so I thought I'd include it. I'm a little bit more a little less quiet and a little bit more in your face, and I'm always happy. So that I thought that really represented who I was and who I am. Then there were 2 pages on your summary of accomplishments. This gets into kind of the text of why you should receive this award. So this should support that summary statement and focus on how you have advanced design practice or education. So I focused on how I was an advocate for the professions, my work in sustainable design, and then my work in kind of the volunteering aspect. I've focused most of my volunteering and community service within the industry. I think the key takeaway here is to make it personable, make it actionable, and make it direct. What have you done? Not just what boards and committees and attendees that you've gone to, but like, what have you done? I also snuck in a few extra projects on this page. And this highlighted some of the work that I had been doing at ESG, because when I applied for this award, I'd only been at ESG for a few years, and that most of those years were COVID years. So not as much got built or got very far along in the process to utilize in my presentation. Then I went to leadership credentials. And so this was all leadership that I had for roles through volunteering. And then I also had leadership through training, so education classes that were more leadership focused. I think this page was really a good place to speak to the advocacy that you have for design within educating other architects or the process or the community impact that you have. And I think this page, one of my reflections on this page is it could have been more of a narrative that related to my summary statement, but I included all of these roles because I thought it was impactful. But I think you can go a different direction than this. I don't know if maybe this was my most successful page, maybe it wasn't, but including some of the photos of some of the volunteer work and some of the presentations that I did at AIA, I thought was piece for leadership credentials. And then we move into exhibits. So the highlight on this is it should reflect your work and your contributions to the work. I struggled with this because I'm not very good at saying I did anything. It's a project team, the team has a goal, and it was really hard. And I think I got some feedback from AIA National on my application that just kind of said, it was too general. It wasn't directly tied to me. So as you write your exhibit information, it's important to talk about the project, but it's also important to talk about your role and your impact, how your summary statement basically is reflected in these projects specifically. I chose a variety of projects that I played different roles in. This one specifically as the first one because it's a Living Building Challenge core certification, and it had a high, the project goals and my personal goals aligned really well. So that was why I put it first. And then this project I also did with ESG in Austin. It had a LEED Silver certification and an Austin Energy Green Building certification. I thought this was a really good mixed use project, as well as city shaping project to showcase. I spent a lot of time in Dallas, Texas in my early parts of my career. I was there for 10 years before moving here. So this is the Dallas Farmers Market. This was a really big community engagement, city-owned buildings, sustainable products that we're selling at the market. And then we also did kind of a retail mixed-use building on this site as well. So, and then on each of these pages, I have someone certifying what I had done. If you do ever want to move forward with an AIA national award after this, the certification, I believe, is supposed to be somebody that's actually not from your firm. It's supposed to be like a client or another person that worked on it. So as you look at who are going to sign those, that's a good piece to add to it, so you don't have to redo that work. And then Legacy at Ann Arbor was a great project that I worked on that was also going to LEED Silver as well for ESG. And then finally, the recommendation letters. I had 3 recommendation letters, and each of them supported me in different ways. So I had someone from that was my previous employer when I worked in Dallas, and gave me the initial role of sustainable design director when I was down there, and now I lead ESG sustainable design work. And then I also had a client. This is the Parkera client, which is the project that I'm doing the Living Building Challenge core certification on. And then Sustainable Investment Group is a group that we work on all of most of our LEED certifications for ESG. We hire them to do sustainable design work. So I thought that was a good breadth of various people that touch my daily career. How I could kind of showcase that. And that's all I have.
Laura, thank you. You've also pointed out that we've tried with the Committee on Design to have the local awards, the state awards, mirror their eligibility and criteria for the national awards as best we can. With the Young Architects Award, there's a lot of mirroring going on, so that if you were to win a state award, and you'd be in pretty good shape for your national award submission. It wouldn't have to start from scratch. I don't think the Next Gen Award aligns perfectly with the Associates Award for national, but we have some resources here on staff with staff folks who can help with that transition if you're going that route. So let's open up for some questions. You all look down on your Zoom pane here, menu. You have that reactions bar, and you can choose a raise hand gesture. If anyone has questions, as you guys are thinking of your questions, I have an early one for just to kind of prime our 2 presenters for the Q&A, and that is how much editing went into the copy for this? I know you both talked about why you chose the things you did, but did you have others read material to get it down to size, or was there not a lot of that as part of your assembling your? We'll start with Ellie.
There's a lot of editing that goes in because I think it was during the pandemic that I attended one of these sessions, having no intentions of, applying for any sort of awards. I don't think the Next Gen was even created at that point. I just wanted to hear what people were talking about. And this lady, and I don't know who it was, said that, you're doing all these things in your career. So all credits to her, all these things in your in your career, and it feels like they're disjointed. And you don't see the through line. But by going through this process and putting your packet together, you understand how these things actually are related to each other. So I think it's a process that you realize that all the things that you do are sort of related. And then that's how, in my case, I was able to shuffle things around and categorize them in a way that made sense for somebody else who hasn't been part of my life to see all of these random things that I'm doing, and be able to understand them, right? You always have to think about that outsider person and how you're telling that story to them. So I would say a lot of editing goes into it. The other thing is, when somebody is doing a letter for you, especially the nomination letter, it is crucial for them to know what you have done, because they have not been following every step of the way with you. And so it's important to send them your accomplishments and kind of resume and fill them in on the things that you have done so that they can write a letter for you, and speaks to your work. So
Yeah, I would
Okay.
definitely second that, especially with the nomination letter, since it should be very specific to your summary statement or your kind of overlining goal is to help your nomination align with that goal. I would say the amount of editing that we did on my nomination letter was probably as much editing as we did on the rest of it. I am not a good writer. I I tend to like to do drawings and be very clear and direct, but not do a whole lot of fluff words. As an architect, we don't creatively write in our drawings very often, and so from that perspective, I think there was a lot of editing and back and forth. And I worked with our marketing team too to try to find that through line. And that was one of the things that I didn't realize about like my volunteer list. And what I had been doing over the course of my career is very focused on architecture. And I had not really paid attention to that until I started writing it all down, putting it in a list and going, oh, I do just kind of tend to follow the profession as it relates to that community service. So I think you also learn a little bit about yourself as you're pulling it together.
We've had a lot of past presenters make that point that you two just made, that there's actually a lot of benefit to putting these submissions together beyond winning the award, that you kind of come together with some better narrative for who you are, where your career is going, and get a little through line or an elevator speech ready. Helps you clarify all that in the course of talking to all these folks that you've worked with and asking for recommendations and nominations and gathering all your materials from your career. So Doug has a question.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to pile on to these previous comments that I just heard. One of them was about how through this process you begin to identify themes, or you're able to kind of categorize the things you've done. And I agree with what Ellie said, which was, you don't, at least in my case as well, I did not recognize the categories in which my efforts were falling, until I started to really look at them. It's like any kind of design project where it isn't until you start to iterate that you really understand the problem. And so I'm just piling on to what Ellie said, that yeah, that's actually one of the, geez, whether you submit or not, actually going through the process of designing this document is actually really useful to help focus your career. And then there was a little bit of conversation about who or when to have letters written. One of the things, so I won a Young Architects Award a few years ago. One of the things that I found helpful was I actually had a draft of my submission that I shared with the folks that wrote letters for me. And so I think that helped them align their letters to what I was working on. So, it was an editing process and there was back and forth, but I think I at least had some kind of level of completion of the submission before I shared it with those folks to get their feedback.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Just because you're nominated by someone or the idea comes up, they don't need to write their letter before you've done your submission. That can come as part of the process as well. It took me some time to come up with my summary statement, and I kind of wish I had done it sooner in the process, but it definitely was one of those things where you kind of have to outline what you're going for and then write the summary statement and then edit the submission back towards your summary statement.
Any questions from the group? It can be on eligibility and required submission criteria as well. I can pull that screen back up, and
Beth has raised her hand.
for some reason I'm not seeing it. Beth.
Hey, yeah. Laura, I was wondering, in your exhibits you decided to include, did you only include ones where you were already licensed, or did you include from your whole career?
I did do my whole career. I did not do just licensed projects. It did get a little squirrely when you had to write what you did though. But because my involvement was sustainability related, that never changed throughout the process. I seemed to come out of school with a really strong interest in that. And my professional career has given me a lot of opportunity to continue to learn in that space. And so as I was working on projects with LEED certifications and things, I got to do that documentation as an associate AIA, non-licensed architect. And so I think that my level of my storytelling behind those projects was still as important, though they weren't part of my licensure. I did do this application with 10 years. I was basically like I was exceeding the requirements. So I had been licensed for 9.5 years when I submitted this. So I did have a fairly good realm of projects to work from, but I did switch. I left Dallas and moved to Minneapolis kind of mid-career or mid 10 years there. So that kind of, and then COVID was in the middle of that. So that there was kind of a little hump in the middle that didn't have as much, I would say, projects that I thought were worth talking about with the sustainability realm. So there was, yes, I pulled from anything that I had worked on in my professional career, not just things that I did after I was licensed.
Thanks.
Doug, I'm going to rely on your eyes. I saw Becky. I saw another one, but I'll say Becky first.
Thank you. Yes, I'm asking for the Young Architects Award. If you think there's a strategy in terms of who the recommendation letters are coming from, if you try to have a diversity of clients and partners and people at your firm or people not at your firm, licensed architects, associated professions, that type of thing, or if it's really just who can speak to the story that you're telling the best.
Chris, do you have a comment on that? Otherwise I can comment too.
I'll let you go first, Laura. I think your insights will be better than mine.
Yeah, I think the AIA National recommends that it's not people that work directly at your office, that it's somebody that is outside of that realm. But that's not discouraged, but that they do encourage you to look at somebody that's outside of that. But I wouldn't say that somebody that supports the story that you're trying to tell, whether it's a technical expertise in something. I think that having a broad look at people that are recommending you, whether it's even somebody that you know through the AIA, like it can still be somebody within the industry, but if it's not somebody that works with you on a day-to-day basis, but still knows the impact that you're having, I think that would be a great choice.
And I will just add, those are, I think, what Laura's said. I've sat in a lot of these juries. What Laura said is exactly right. It's great when those recommendations can be diverse. But in the end, it's the folks that are writing with authority and detail about your accomplishments that really have sway with the jury. So those are two things to balance.
I would note that when I was asking people to write letters. I was also asking people to, I can't remember the language, but it's basically attest to your role on a project. For each project that you include in the submission, it's required that somebody verifies your role on that project, which in most cases, those folks are clients. I didn't necessarily feel comfortable asking for those things, and then a letter also. This is just me, but I was a little reluctant to say, can you attest to my participation on this project? Oh, and by the way, can you also write a letter about me? So in my case, I don't think I had, well, I know I didn't have any client letters in my submission. Most of the folks that wrote letters for me were work colleagues, people that I had worked with in other capacities other than in a kind of client architect role. I also will note, I'm going to note one more thing, and that is I asked for an extra letter. So this was a kind of a tactical move. What if somebody I asked for a letter for, letter from, because I had a letter show up like the day before the deadline. What if it didn't happen? So I asked for an extra letter from someone. And it actually worked out really well because I was, even though I didn't include the letter in the submission, I was actually able to take excerpts from that letter and use them, you know, to amplify certain aspects of it. So I thought that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I definitely had multiple emails reminding people to get their recommendation letter in, and then multiple emails reminding them what they should be including in that as well, because like Ellie said, you need to kind of show them what your accomplishments are so that they can clearly write those letters of recommendation. So I also, like Doug, had one come in, I think the day before. It happens.
I thought I saw a hand go up from Tony. Tony, if that is wrong, don't worry about it. I just wanted to make sure, check with you to make sure that you didn't have your hand raised. Anybody have another question?
I didn't have my hand up, but I do have a question though.
Okay.
I was just about to raise my hand. Just kind of curious, that's probably on the website, but was this you guys' first time submitting applications for each of these awards? Is there like I think for the young architect, well, I think there's term limits for all of them, for both of them, but just kind of curious of where you guys kind of land and this is your first time or not.
I actually submitted to AIA National first due to the timing. Because I realized I was timing out with the 10-year. So I actually submitted to AIA National first and then did not receive the award. So then I edited based on the comments that I received from that and submitted to AIA Minnesota. And so yes, it was my first time for both. I did not win the national. I just won the AIA Minnesota award. So, and now I can't apply again.
You're a winner for us. It was also my first time, but the Next Gen Award is so new. I had heard about it the year that Nicole won it and didn't feel like I had enough of a story at that time. But the next year I did put together my submission and won it. But I do, maybe Chris, you can talk about this, but I don't think that if you're not timed out, you could keep applying and kind of making your statements better and kind of improving your package.
Yeah, we're able to give a little feedback. It's usually incredibly positive, not detailed, but some feedback from those folks who don't win in a particular year. We have many winners that have won on their second and even third try. So it is definitely, if you are within the time parameters for the award, it is definitely a good idea to refresh your entry and to submit again. That often happens that's when folks win. Thanks for the question, Tony. Any others? I'm going to throw one more question out, waiting for another person to raise their hand. Action photos, you know, the folks of your volunteer activities, are those hard to come by? Where do you find those? How important were they to you, to the submissions, to show you and you know, involved in certain things beyond just the showing the built and designed work?
Yes, I feel like I want to document my life differently after going through this whole process, because it made me realize like how much I have done, but there's no photos of me. And so I asked one of the organizers of an event that I was speaking at, and I was a chair for one of their committees, to actually send me photos that he has taken. And he was so kind, and we had an event coming up that he took the time to do extra photos of me. And so I really appreciated that from him. But also like how you keep track of everything that you have done. You know, we volunteer here and there, and we give our time here and there. And it's not that big of a deal to us because that we're happy to be doing it. But then when you're putting something like this together, everybody else wants to know what you have done. And so keeping track of those years, the times, no matter how insignificant, because you could go back and revisit and recategorize those in your submissions later. So I feel like I'll be doing a better tracking of that for the future in, you know, Google Docs or something.
Yeah, I had the nice benefit of switching jobs in 2019, so I had gone back and done this research from 2009 to 2019, kind of pulling some stuff together to try to get a job in another city in another state. So I had some of that, but yes, I do think it was challenging to get pictures of me in the volunteer pieces, and I did include some that don't include me, but that it was part of the event. But I do think that you're right. I take pictures when I go to things that I'm a part of, but I'm never in them. And it would be good to cross share photos with your friends and colleagues so that you're in some of the photos you take. This is the same problem I have as a mother. I take pictures of my child, but I'm never in them.
Any more questions? And Doug's going to help me with them in case I'm not seeing the raised hands, which I seem to have trouble with.
I don't see any.
Okay.
I don't either.
Okay. Well, please reach out to me at hudson@aia-mn.org if you have any questions. If you have particular questions for Ellie or Laura, I can forward your emails onto them for a reply. I'm sure they can give us some good answers as well. But we've got actually an unusual. I think we've got an extra week in the submission window this year. We're not due until May 31st. We've got a full almost 9 weeks. It's good to get a lot of the work done early, even if you're not to the point of polishing it, so that you're not scrambling at the end. So please do reach out. On behalf of the Committee on Design, I want to thank Doug and Rebecca. Rebecca had to step out for another meeting, but thank Doug for all their efforts and Rebecca for all their efforts, and the Committee on Design, and constantly keeping kind of everything moving smoothly on these award programs, refining them when we need to. And I especially want to thank Ellie and Laura for the great presentations, for their time today. They were great winners for us, and we appreciate their insights into how they pulled their submissions together. All right, thanks everyone. This video will be up probably early next week on our YouTube channel. We'll put it up, a link to it on the webpage where the criteria and the eligibility requirements are for the 2 awards. So if you want to go back and review any of this, you'll be able to. Thanks for joining us. I see some thanks in the chat. So speakers, your efforts today were much appreciated. Thanks everyone, and good luck with your submissions. We hope to get a lot of them this year. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Good luck, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah, good luck.